Hello, and welcome to Greet the Week. I am Mona Duncan, your host, and today's topic is going to be on healthy boundaries, setting them, seeing what they are. And I think of Dionne Warwick and her song about what the world needs now is love, sweet love. What the world, Dionne Warwick, can you just hear her belting it out? That what the world needs now is love, sweet love. It's the only thing there's just too little of. What the world needs now is love, sweet love. Nope, not just for some, but for everyone. And so in looking at that, possibly one of the other things that we need is also boundaries, knowing and being cognizant of when we are within those boundaries or not. That perhaps boundaries is another one of those universal life issues that there's just too little of. The irony is that too many or too few produces the same result. I mean, whether with your child or with your student or with your employees, if you are too generous or if you're too stingy, the extremes produce the same result, which is an insecure individual. And so in any area, when we go to the extreme of the spectrum, they are, well, extreme. But I have a little chart here that if on one line, if we align and agree, oh yeah, I'm all for it. And on the other end, we may resist and rebel. But what we have done is we have set ourselves up for lack. We have set ourselves up for insecurity, of always wondering, well, do I really agree, or is there more to know? Or am I really resistant? So it is learning to kind of come middle ground where we can have a really wide path in which to run and explore and engage and learn more. So here's just some random thoughts on boundaries. First of all, what are they? Well, a boundary is a line of some sort, whether it is visible or invisible, and it defines and it establishes identity. Goes back to the fact that I say so frequently that we are all seeking identity, position, purpose, significance, and validation. And so think of a fence. That fence is a boundary that does both. It encloses, but it also excludes. Think of that fence as protecting your property, as keeping your cattle in or your dog in and safe. That it encloses, it keeps them in, it keeps, vehicles from running across it. It encloses and keeps in, but it also excludes. So it's part of the protecting and the keeping. And then we also have some invisible boundaries, and they are pretty multiple, but they include the things that we believe. They include the creeds that we live by, the rules that we go by, the regulations by which we order our lives. Boundaries also surround and define, whether it be, and again, it's back to how we live our lives, whether it's political, religious, military, civic, familial, gang, cult. It covers, the boundaries cover everything, whether it is from the many to the few. And anytime we self-evaluate, we need to be conscious of these boundaries and realizing that I am looking at who I am, what I believe or what I think, what I stand for, and what I will or will not do. Kind of goes hand in hand with lead management. And then without boundaries, we cease to exist. If we don't have any boundaries, if we don't have any opinions, if we don't have any say-so, then we cease to just be a tumbleweed blown in the wind of going with this one or that one, whichever one is the most powerful. So it is needed that we have some boundaries, and we want them to always be healthy. So here, picture it. An individual boundary is displayed kind of like a shield. If we hold it high, so the feet are visible, but not high enough to protect the head, it gives a false impression of protection while leaving the individual vulnerable. So what is wrong with this picture? Well, without a foundation, without it going all the way down to a solid, firm foundation that you can actually stand on and be strong on, vermin can crawl in underneath. How to come in under the skirt, those lowlifes, the naive inclusions, those often unwanted invitations to those who feign love, but are not really for our best interest. Also, the vision of the individual with that boundary there that I'm trying to put everything off, is that our vision is limited. We cannot see the big picture. We will not see the destruction or the rescue that's on the way. It's kind of like having our head in the sand. It keeps out those who really care, who really are vital and important to us. And although we may declare war on others, the real battle is always within ourselves. And it's seeing how we're declaring. And the person who thinks himself unworthy of love becomes over-responsible. Where there is a healthy dose of self-love, self-acceptance, self-respect, life blossoms. I think about a play that a group that I was involved in presented, and this one guy, after it was all over with, was just so distraught because he ruined the whole thing. Well, from the hour play, his portion was probably 5 minutes. So that would be, an unhealthy boundary to think in my 5 little minutes, I ruined the whole thing for everyone. But whenever we think ourselves unworthy of being a part, of not setting up a healthy boundary, of just going along, we harm ourselves as well as others. So what we want to do is dismantle the wall, but not destroy it, because we need those protections. As much as we may live in an instant society, genuine change takes time. To destroy our wall too quickly will leave us exposed, weak, vulnerable. Plus, we need those parts of that wall to set a healthy boundary. It's not that we give up on things, it's that we reuse them, repurpose them. We look at the meaning that's within them. There is a difference in saying, I cannot say no, I cannot set that boundary. It's a big difference in cannot and being unfamiliar with. If we've never set a boundary for someone, as if I'm not doing that, or it's out of being unfamiliar with. Forced boundaries are often a release, as in having that time that you need to be somewhere. That can be beneficial for you, those things that you really need to do. And that there's a time, it's kind of that forced boundary. But it can be real stressing on us if we don't recognize the boundary. And then also kind of in looking at those forced boundaries, it can be hard to stand up to peer pressure at any age. And so it is good sometimes, but be open and honest about it, to allow someone to be a heady for you. My daughter, when she was a teen, liked to go out with her friends, and I certainly enjoyed her being able to go out with her friends and so forth. But there would be times that she would say yes to going to something that she really didn't want to say yes to going to. And so we talked about it. She discussed it with me. We talked about it. I said, well, how about this? How about if you let me be your heavy? And you say, well, I don't think my mom would let me. Or no, rather than saying I don't want to, I don't think mom would let me do that. So sometimes it's okay to let someone be your, well, I can't do that because I need to do this. But setting those boundaries becomes so freeing once we flow in them. Help is seen as intrusive when unasked. So if someone is trying to give us a boundary, we don't like it, but it's also a blessing whenever we receive it. So the condition of quality boundaries is that we always want to project a warm, friendly, accepting environment, whether it's the boundary is a no or the boundary is for one to be open to engage in useful and meaningful work or activities in everything that we do. That's kind of a good gauge as to whether I want this to be said as something I will do or will not do. Is it meaningful? Is it engaging? To doing your personal best in every endeavor. To having frequent self-evaluations where you get real honest with yourself as to who I am, what I'm doing, what I'm thinking, whether it's effective or ineffective. And to realize always, always, always to be in tune with our wisdom heart, to realize that if our motivation to do something or to not do something is in keeping with and is on the same keel as our wisdom heart, that it's coming from that intrinsic motivation of the yes or a no. And then having healthy relations with people, of course, yes, but having a good, healthy relationship with money, having a good, healthy relation to time, a good, healthy relation to organization, whether it is the piles of files or whether it's kind of ABC, being able to find something. So, and realizing that limits can increase the fullness of your life. Less really is more. As we have, those limits can really increase the fullness. So here's 5 challenges. Setting parameters. What line will you not cross? What line? And that may take a lot of really thinking about. It may take a lot of experience before you realize, no, that's a line I'm not crossing anymore. And how can you lovingly and kindly yet boldly, going back to our assertiveness, being firm yet kind, I'm not going there. What line will you not cross? The challenge to appreciate your family of origin. That regardless, they gave you life. And to be thankful and appreciate that. I have a quote here for you from Pat Conroy in his movie, The Prince of Tide. He had his lead character to say, I learned that I needed to love my mother and my father in all of their flawed, outrageously humanity, and that in families there are no crimes beyond forgiveness. It is the mystery of life that sustains me now. It is realizing that we are all flawed and fabulous. And it is our flaws sometimes when we could use those, it's that just that we are all flawed. And whenever we can accept one another in a healthy, boundary-wise, well, I think I'm rambling now. So another challenge is to become a lifelong learner, and to do that by being open to new opportunities. Whenever I worked with the prisoners, periodically I would take them on outings, provided that they were within complete compliance with the institution. Anyway, there was this one man that he said, well, I had invited him several times because he was within the parameters, but he just didn't go, no. And then one time he decided to go. And he went and he just kept saying how fun that was and how much he enjoyed it. And he said, I always thought those kind of new people would do things like that. I always thought they were kind of silly. But he began to realize how that is a new opportunity. You can see life and things differently. And that there's more enjoyment to it than, just to not judge things and to be open to it, have a more open boundary. Anyway, he started being really open to going to and learning more stuff. And so it's being open to. Challenge number 5, to think about what you think about. And as you think about what you're thinking about, do you need to monitor it? Is there anything that needs to be censored? Is there anything that needs to be fed? Think about your thoughts. They're always there, and we have a million of them. And sometimes they are repeats of what other people have said. It's more what we're thinking, what someone else has told us. So how original are they? I need to put that on there as a little addendum too, is how original is that thought? Or are we just being an also ran? And so challenge number 5 is to take responsibility for your life, your thoughts, your actions, and your attitudes. And once we take the full responsibility for that, good, bad, or indifferent, we are becoming stronger in a ways that we may not even be aware of. I like what Mary Hunt said. She said, disadvantages can be turned into advantages simply by the way we look at them. The happiest people don't necessarily have the best of everything. They just make the best of everything. And so it depends on how you look at it, how you think about it, how you act upon it, what your attitude is toward it, that leads to setting that healthy boundary. So, Little House on the Prairie. There was an episode there where Laura, something had happened and she was deeply wounded. And so then in the process of her ego was wounded. And in the process of that, she became vindictive. And later she was talking with her mom and she said, I meant to be hurtful, but it didn't stop my hurting. They hurt me so badly that I intended to revenge on them. I intended to hurt them. But then Ma stepped in and she gave her some very sage advice. And so I would like to share Ma's sage advice with you. And she said, nothing is solved by shutting off the other person's argument. Quarrels would never last long if there was only one person at fault. So, give a little added lines here. If we begin to look at how am I a part of this problem? How am I a part of either overstepping a boundary or not enforcing a boundary? How am I a part of this problem? Well, Ma continued, don't be afraid to hurt. Hurt is a part of life. Hurt is a way to measure happiness by. And so, whether it has been something that we have, set a boundary too harsh for ourselves, whenever those things hurt, begin to look at them and see how effective it is or is not. And then the third thing that Mom said to wounded Laura is, somewhere deep down inside, there is a trueness in all of us, telling us who we really are. Find it. And so that is, yes, it is realizing that we have that boundary within us. And find it. There is a true boundary within each of us, and we need to search for it and find it. And not only find it, but learn how to use it bravely, kindly, judiciously. Anyway, thank you for being here today, and many blessings and good mental health.